I suppose if we were to only play one team the rest of the season, we will be doing a lot better than we are right now. Anyway, as the season continues on, it seems like it's more of the same inconsistencies. You know what I mean? It's time for another episode of Hi there, it's Brett Hornby here, and welcome back to another episode of my Calgary Roughnecks this month. Here we are up to Season 3, Episode number 5. As we'll talk about and recap how March 2022 went for our Calgary Roughnecks in the National Lacrosse League, as we're heading into the stretch drive in the second half of the season. But given how the season has played out with games being rescheduled and postponed and rescheduled, I should say, the Calgary Roughnecks, I'm going to say, are the busiest team in the second half of the season. But before I bring up my notes and recap how March went for my Calgary Roughnecks, if you want to follow along with this Calgary sports fans journey, just make sure you hit like and subscribe. And I have my other social media links down in the description below as a Calgary sports fan. But I was going to say that this Calgary Roughnecks team has been inconsistent and hard to figure out this season. It's definitely going to be probably ultimately sealing their fate. I'm going to say there's definitely one team that we have our number for, but there's one team that seems to have our number against. So let's bring my notes. And the Calgary Roughnecks played 4 games in the month of March, once I get my notes out, and we'll see how things went in March. So game 9, this would be the second half of the season for the Calgary Roughnecks. Excuse me, as we'll go back to Friday, March the 4th, as the Calgary Roughnecks were on the road as they were taking on the San Diego Seals. This was at the Pechanga Arena at 8 p.m. ball drop, and I'm going to say, since when the San Diego Seals have joined the National Lacrosse League, I'm going to say they definitely brewed up a nice rivalry with our Calgary Roughnecks, and I'm going to say they definitely had our number. And this one didn't have very many high numbers, if you know what I mean, in this one, as there were definitely a lot of shots. It was a goaltender's duel, but not too much scoring. And actually, in the first quarter, there was 2 goals, and they both went to the San Diego Seals. There's Zach Greer who got the first goal for the game, not until the 8:51 minute mark of the first quarter. So you definitely had plenty of time to settle in your seat to see the first goal of this game. So it was 1-0 San Diego. And then former Roughneck Wesley Berg made it 2-0 for San Diego at 11:08 of the first quarter. And that's actually how things stood after the first quarter. The San Diego Seals had an early 2-0 lead. However, Calgary was able to get on the board, as it was Curtis Superman Dixon who scored early in the second quarter on a power play at the 117 minute mark to make it 2-1 for San Diego at that point. However, Wesley Berg got his second of the game for San Diego at 6:47 to make it 3-1. And actually, that's how things stood at halftime. So we got a very, very low scoring goaltenders duel on hand for this one. I'm not too sure how many lacrosse fans are fans of that kind of game, but there was definitely not many numbers, as I mentioned, for this game. So now going into the third quarter, it was still 3-1 for San Diego. It wasn't until the 7:31 minute mark of the third quarter, so just past the halfway point of the third quarter, had its first goal, and actually that went to the Calgary Roughnecks, as Calgary scored a shorty goal, as it was Shane Simpson who scored to make it 3-2 for San Diego at that point. However, San Diego was able to add a couple more goals in the third quarter to pull ahead, and given how low scoring this game is, this could be huge, as Austin Stats scored at the 9:40 minute mark of the third quarter. That made it 4-2 for San Diego. And then Jeff Noble made it 5-2 for San Diego at 13:18 of the third quarter. So it was 5-2 San Diego after the third quarter. So we only had 2 goals in the first quarter combined, 2 goals in the second quarter combined, and 3 goals in the third quarter combined. So what did the fourth quarter had in store? Well, let's just say a few more goals, but still for lacrosse, it was a very, very low-scoring game. So going into the fourth quarter, the San Diego Seals really pulled this ahead in their favor, thanks to a couple of Roughnecks, former Roughnecks meant to say. First, it was Wesley Berg who got the hat trick at the 3:30-minute mark to make it 6-2 for San Diego, and then Austin Stats made it 7-2 at the 6:09-minute mark of the fourth quarter. And then it kind of stings as Dane Doby, who scored the another goal for the San Diego Seals against the Calgary Roughnecks. This was at the 6:51-minute mark to make it 8-2 for San Diego. Calgary was able to get a couple more goals, as it was Dan Taylor who scored at the 7:14-minute mark of the fourth quarter to make it 6-3, or 8-3 I should say, and it was Tanner Cook, the rookie, at 8:34. This is as close as Calgary got, as it was 8-4 for San Diego, and then Brody Merrill, who put it away at the 14:52-minute mark. So ultimately, the San Diego Seals won this one 9-4 in a very, very tight defensive goaltenders duel in this game, because there was 106 shots taken on net in this one, as the Calgary Roughnecks did outshoot the San Diego Seals 54-52. So the former Roughneck in Frankie Siliano definitely got the upper hand on this one on current Roughneck goalie Christian Del Bianco, as Frank Siliano was the first star of this game, and Christian Del Bianco the third one, and Wesley Berg, the former Roughneck, was the second one, as he had 3 goals and 2 assists for 5 points. So the game later, Tanner Cook was there were 4 different players that scored for the Calgary Roughnecks, and it was Wesley Berg who got the hat trick for the San Diego Seals for 3. The assists, he had Jesse King had 2 assists for Calgary, while Drew Noble had 3 for San Diego. Says, Christian Del Bianco made 43 for Calgary, while Frankie Siliano made 50 for San Diego. Caused turnovers, Zach Currier had 5 for Calgary, where Brody Merrill had 2 for San Diego. Loose balls, it was Zach Currier who had 11 for Calgary, and Patrick Shumay for San Diego had 9. So March didn't start off very good for the Calgary Roughnecks as the San Diego Seals. I'm going to say since they've joined the the league, they have been a thorn in the side for the Calgary Roughnecks, as Jose Curtis Dixon only had a goal and assist for 2 points. Jess King had 2 assists, and those are the only 2 players that had multiple games for the Calgary Roughnecks. This is almost like a hockey game, especially for the high-scoring game for one end. So that was game number 9, as the Calgary Roughnecks didn't have success again in San Diego. So game 10, this is the crazy NLL schedule, as the Calgary Roughnecks had 2 home games in 3 nights. So game 10, this happened on Thursday, March the 17th, on St. Patrick's Day, as the Calgary Roughnecks were hosting the Saskatchewan Rush. This was a 7 p.m. ball drop at the Scotiabank Saddledome. So how did things go with the Saskatchewan Rush and the St. Patrick's Day party? Well, things definitely did start off very good. I'm going to say for the Calgary Roughnecks, as it was Jesse King who got the goal 30 seconds in for Calgary to make it 1-0 for Calgary. Robert Church got answered back quickly for Saskatchewan on the power play at 1:24 to make it a 1-1 game. So we had 2 goals early in this one, and then it wasn't until the 8:08-minute mark of the first quarter that Saskatchewan took a 2-1 lead, as Murphy scored to make it 2-0. However, Tyler Pace did score on the power play at 9:54 to tie this game up at 2-2. And then the last two goals of the quarter went to the Calgary Roughnecks as Tanner Cook scored at the 13:02 minute mark to make it 3-2 for Calgary. And then Zach Haywires scored at 13:28 to make it 4-2. So Calgary had a good start with the St. Patrick's Day party with a 4-2 lead. Calgary had just as many goals in the first quarter as they did all in San Diego. So that is a good start for the Calgary Roughnecks. The second quarter, there was definitely a lot of back and forth and a lot of offense in this one, as I did take this game in, as I did have to take Friday off from work, but hey, it's St. Patrick's Day party. So going to the second quarter, there was Robert Church who scored early for Saskatchewan, 52 seconds in, to make it 4-3 for Calgary at that point. Or Jesse King got a short-handed goal at 3:27 to make it 5-3 for Calgary, and then Murphy scored again for Saskatchewan at the 4:50 minute mark to make it 5-4 for Calgary, and then Robert Church had a power play at the goal for Saskatchewan at 6:46 to tie the game up at 5-5, and then Matthews scored a power play goal at 8:14 for Saskatchewan to enjoy their first lead again at 6-5 in the second quarter. However, we have 4 more goals to go in the second quarter for halftime, as it was Tyler Burton who got his first of the season at 10:24 to make it 6-6 at that point. And then Jesse King scored another one at the 11:49 minute mark to make it 7-6 for Calgary at that point in the second quarter. And then Keenan scored. He actually is the son of Derek Keenan, the general manager, who is actually related to, Mike Keenan, the former National Hockey League coach, who actually did spend some time as head coach of the Calgary Flames. He tied it up for Saskatchewan at 12:44 to make it 7-7. However, Zach Haywires, he had a big game in this one, as he scored at the 13:59 minute mark to make it 8-7 for Calgary, and that's how things stood at halftime, as Calgary had an 8-7 lead at halftime. Now going into the third quarter, it wasn't until the 14 minute mark of the third quarter, it was Robert Church who scored for Saskatchewan to tie this game up at 8 apiece. And then Dan Taylor scored at 4:33 to make it 9-8 for Calgary at this point. However, Linter did score for Saskatchewan at 4:55, so we had 3 goals in like a 40-second span in the third quarter. So it was 9-9 at that point, at the just before the 5-minute mark of the third quarter. And it wasn't until just before the 9-minute mark at 8:59 that Zach Currier scored for Calgary to make it 10-9 for Calgary at that point. And then Saskatchewan had a couple of late goals in the final 2 minutes of the third quarter to take an 11-10 lead at the end of the third quarter. It was Linder who scored at the 13:08 minute mark to tie it up at 10. And it was Murphy who scored at 14:06 to make it 11-10 for Saskatchewan at that point. So what kind of game are we going to have going into the fourth quarter? Well, it wasn't until the 3:50 minute mark of the fourth quarter that it was Kyle Waters who scored for Calgary to tie the game up at 11 apiece. And then Tyler Pace scored at the 4:31 minute mark. So Calgary regained the lead at 12-11 at that point in the fourth quarter. And then Zach Haywires, he scored his hat trick at the 8:40 minute mark of the fourth quarter to make it 13-11 for Calgary at that point. And then Josh Currier, which he is the brother of Zach Currier, for the Calgary Roughnecks, I believe so, he did make it within 1 for the Saskatchewan Rush at 9:34 to make it 13-12 for Calgary. However, Curtis Dixon, he definitely scored a dagger in Superman fashion, as I remember at the game, at the 12:12 minute mark of the fourth quarter to make it 14-12 for Calgary at that point. And actually that's how this one ended, as the Calgary Roughnecks, they ultimately pulled off the Saskatchewan Rush to win this one 14-12 to at least to take the season series, as they have one more game later in the month, as Calgary beats Saskatchewan 14-12. And yes, I was at the game and they won. Red Solo Cup time. So the shots on goal for this one, actually Saskatchewan, I'm going to say for much of the game, did have the edge in play as they did outshoot Calgary 60-46 in this one. I felt Christian Del Bianco actually had a pretty good game for Calgary in this one. The first star was Zach Currier with a goal and assist for 2 points. Robert Church, he led the way for the Saskatchewan Rush. In his second star, he had 4 goals, 4 assists for 8 points. And then Zach Haywers, he had his best game as a Calgary Roughneck with 3 goals and assists for 4 points. So that's the 3 stars. So the game leaders, well, Robert Church led the way with 4 goals for Saskatchewan. Zach Haywers had 3 goals for Calgary. Saves, well, Eric Penny in Saskatchewan's net made 32 saves. Well, Christian Del Bianco, he had a solid game. He made 48 saves for Calgary. Caused turnovers. Carl Rubish for Saskatchewan had 4. Well, Zach Currier had 3 for Calgary. And then comes the assist. Robert Church had 4 for Saskatchewan. Well, Curtis Dixon had 5 for Calgary. Loose ball, Carl Rubish had 11 for Saskatchewan, while Zach Currier had 16, I should say, for Calgary. So leading the way for the Roughnecks, as I say, Curtis Dixon, he had a goal and assist for 6 points, as well as Jesse King, he had 3 goals and 3 assists for 6 points, but Jesse King is our leading scorer, and then he also had Zach Haywers with 3 goals and assists for 4 points, and Tyler Pace had 2 goals, 2 assists, 4 points, and then Tanner Kirk, Zach Kerr each had a goal and assist. As I mentioned for the Saskatchewan Rush, it was Robert Church, who had 4 goals, 4 assists for 8 points, and then Murphy, he had 3 goals, 1 assist for 4 points, and Matthews with a goal and 3 assists for 4 points. So those are the leading scorers for both sides of the ball in this one, Game 10, with Calgary and Saskatchewan. So that was Game 10. So Game 11, this happened 2 nights later. On Saturday, March 19th, as they called this one, Hair of the Dog Party, as the Calgary Roughnecks had their first live look at the Panther City lacrosse team. The bench team based out of Fort Worth, Texas. This was also a 7 p.m. ball drop at the Scotiabank Saddledome. So how did things go for Calgary in this one, with the fact that last month in February, Calgary won a close one by 1 in Fort Worth? Well, this game definitely reminded of the Calgary Roughnecks in a nutshell this season. As I felt this one, the Calgary Roughnecks had a good start, but it was the Panther City lacrosse team that when they had their chances, they were able to capitalize. First, it was Jesse King who scored on a power play for Calgary, not as early in this game, but at 2:27. It was on a similar fashion like the Saskatchewan game, as it was at 2:27. So Calgary had an early 1-0 lead in this one. However, Panther City did eventually tie it up. It wasn't until 6:51 of the first quarter as Will Malcolm who scored to make it 1-1, and then Dan Taylor got Calgary back up on a 2-1 at 8:18 to make it 2-1 at that point. And then it's Grin who scored for Panther City at 8:41 to make it 2-2. And then we had 3 more goals in the first quarter. Curtis Dixon scored at 9:35 to make it 3-2 for Calgary at that point. And then at 10:53, Zach Hayward scored to continue leading off his big game from the night before. Made it 4-2 for Calgary at that point. But then on the power play at 13:04, Farrell got the goal for the Panther City team to make it 4-3, and that's how things stood after the first quarter. Calgary having a 4-3 lead. I felt Calgary had chances and definitely could have been up by more, but the Panther City lacrosse, they definitely have a better shooting percentage. Now, if you go into the second quarter, I felt this is where things started going downhill for the Calgary Roughnecks. Well, Grennan scored for Panther City at 2:47 of the second quarter. That tied the game up at 4-4 at that point. Tyler Pace got Calgary back up at 5-4 at 4:25. However, Panther City scored the next 3 goals. It was Paul Caputo who scored at 7:45. That made it 5-5 at that point. Well, Malcolm made it 6-5 for Panther City at 8:07, and then Paul Caputo at 9:04 again scored to make it 7-4 or 7-5 for Panther City. At that point, Curtis Dixon did score for Calgary at 9:27 to make it a 7-6 game for Panther City. However, Panther City had 2 late goals heading into halftime to take a 9-6 lead, as it was Farewell at 12:35, and then Burns with literally a second left before halftime. So Panther City had a 9-6 lead going into halftime. And then going into the third quarter, Panther City continued to take over. That's definitely been the mantra for the Calgary Roughnecks this season, as they have a couple quarters they disappeared, and they disappeared in the big time in the third quarter in my mind, as Farrell got a power play goal 56 seconds in the third quarter. That made it 10-6 for Panther City. And then Will Malcolm scored another one at 4:54. That made it 11-6 for Panther City. And then Milligan got a power play goal until 11:42 of the third quarter to make it 12-6 for Panther City. And that was all the scoring in the third quarter. So the Calgary Roughnecks, they were shut out in the third quarter, now find themselves down 12-6 going into the fourth quarter. And then as the Calgary was trying to play catch up, unfortunately it was a little too late, as I'm going to say, as going into fourth quarter, it was Pat Dodds who got Panther City up 13-6 at 2:29, and Eric Tykehurst got his first goal of the season for Calgary at 3:32. That made it 13-7 for Panther City at that point. And then Graham got a goal for Panther City at 4:40 to make it 14-7 at that point. And then Calgary did score the next 4 goals to get this one closer, but I felt that it was too late at this point. Curtis Dixon did score at the 5:08-minute mark of the fourth quarter to make it 14-8 Panther City. And then it got 14-9 for Panther City at 7:20 on a Tyler Pace goal. And then it got 14-10 on a Jesse King goal at 10:24. And then Tanner Cook, this was as close as Calgary got in this one at 13:51. Made it 14-11 for Panther City, and ultimately the Calgary Roughnecks took this one on the chin as they lost this one 14-11. As I felt the Calgary Roughnecks in the second, especially in the third quarter, what sunk them at this point, as they were outscored 9-2 in the second and third quarter alone. And that was the game right there. And then when it comes to the shots and goal, Calgary did outshoot Panther City 51-42 overall, but the goals definitely came with a better shooting percentage from Panther City. So the 3 stars of the game, it was Will Malcolm who led the way for Panther City. 3 goals, 5 assists for 8 points. Curtis Dixon was the second star for Calgary. 3 goals, 2 assists for 5 points. Dean Farrell was the third star for Panther City with 3 goals, 3 assists for 6 points. So the game leaders, the goals, well, Will Malcolm for Panther City had 3 goals. Curtis Dixon had 3 goals for Calgary. And then when it comes to save, it was Nick Dumond, who got 40 for Panther City. Well, it's Christian Del Bianco, he definitely didn't have as good of a game. He made 28 saves, and actually for a minute, it was Keels that was in net for the Calgary Roughnecks, as Kurt Malowski seemed to do a little Mike Keenan goalie switch again, and then for cause turnovers, it was Liam Burns only had 1 for Panther City. Well, Nate Wade, who actually had 4 for Calgary. Assists, Patrick Dodds had 7 for Panther City, while Tyler Pace had 4 for Calgary. Loose balls, it was Jeremy Thompson, who had 13 for Panther City, while Zach Currier had 11 for Calgary. So, I mean, looking at the game summary, the leading way for the Calgary Roughnecks, well, Curtis Dixon, as mentioned, he had 3 goals, 2 assists for 5 points. Tyler Pace had 2 goals, 4 assists for 6 points. As well, you have Dan Taylor had a goal and 2 assists for 3 points, so those are the big multi-point getters. Also, Tanner Kirk with a goal and 3 assists for 4 points. Panther City, as I mentioned, Will Malcolm led the way with 8 points for 3 goals and 5 assists. Patrick Dodds had 1 goal and 7 assists for 8 points. And then Dean Farrell, he had 3 goals, 3 assists for 6 points, and then Green had the hat trick as well for Panther City. So felt like it was a complete game effort for Panther City at this one. And the former Roughneck that was on the Panther City was Chad Cummings. He did not have any points in this one as he was claimed in the expansion draft. So Calgary right now is 1-2 in the month of March, but they had one more game to go, but that was game 11 against the Panther City Across team as we had our first live look at them at home. So game 12 to wrap up March for the Calgary Roughnecks. This happened on Saturday, March the 26th, as the Calgary Roughnecks were on the road taking on the Saskatchewan Rush. This was a 7:30 ball drop at the SaskTel Center. How did things go with the Saskatchewan Rush? Did the Calgary Roughnecks were able to sweep the season series? Well, first it was Robert Church who did score for the Saskatchewan Rush on a power play at the 1:38-minute mark of the first quarter. Saskatchewan struck first with a 1-0 lead, and Saskatchewan is based out of Saskatoon, by the way, if you're wondering. And then it was Mark Matthews who scored at 2:01 for Saskatchewan to make it 2-0 for Saskatchewan. So things did not look good early for the Calgary Roughnecks. However, Calgary did get two more goals of their own later in the first quarter to tie the game up at 2-2. It was Dan Taylor who scored the first goal for Calgary this game at 5:34. That made 2-1 Saskatchewan, and Tyler Pace had a power play goal at 6:18, so that tied up the game at 2-2. However, Mark Matthews did score at the 13:31-minute mark of the first quarter to make it 3-2 for Saskatchewan, and actually that's how things stood after the first quarter. 3-2 Saskatchewan. Second quarter, there was actually only one goal to report, and actually that did go to the Calgary Roughnecks. It wasn't until the 10-11-minute mark of the second quarter on a power play, so Jesse King tied it up for Calgary at 3-3, and actually that's how things stood after the second quarter and halftime, with the game tied up at 3-3. So definitely another goaltenders duel defensive battle. Then going into the third quarter, I felt the Calgary Roughnecks actually were able to put this one away. However, things did get interesting in the fourth quarter, I should say. So going in the third quarter, there was Curtis Dixon who did score first in the second half. His first of the game for Calgary at 1:54 to make it 4-3 for Calgary at that point. And then Curtis Dixon struck again, not until the 9:08-minute mark of the third quarter. That made it 5-3 for Calgary. And then Hayden Dixon, no relation to Curtis, got a power play goal at 11:27. That made it 6-3 for Calgary at that point. And then the last goal of the third quarter also went to Calgary. So Calgary was able to shut out Saskatchewan for the second straight quarter, as Jesse King scored on a power play at 13:33 to make it 7-3 for Calgary. And that's how things stood at the third quarter. Calgary up 7-3, shutting out Saskatchewan in two consecutive quarters. So going into the fourth quarter, things definitely got very interesting, as I should say. First, Tyler Pace did score on the power play at 1:14. That made it 8-3 for Calgary. However, Saskatchewan scored three quick goals themselves to make this one very interesting. First, Mark Matthews had a shorty at 2:13, so Saskatchewan got within 4 with an 8-4 game for Calgary. Then at 3:11, Saskatchewan on a power play. Mark Matthews scored. That made it 8-5 for Calgary. And then Linter scored for Saskatchewan on a power play just before the 5-minute mark at 4:59. That made it 8-6 for Calgary at that point. So Saskatchewan was looking to get back into this game, but unfortunately, or fortunately for Calgary, they were able to hold off and actually were able to hang on and sweep the Saskatchewan Rush with an 8-6 victory. Shots on goal will favored the Saskatchewan Rush as they outshot Calgary 54-43 in this one. First star of the game went to Curtis Dixon, who had 2 goals 4 assists for 6 points. Second star went to Mark Matthews. He had 4 goals and 2 assists for 6 points. And then Christian Del Bianco was the third star as he made 48 saves on 54 shots in this one. So the leading game leaders, while Curtis Dixon, who had 2 goals for Calgary, while Mark Matthews had 4 for Saskatchewan. Saves, Christian Del Bianco made 48 for Calgary, while Eric Kennedy made 35 for Saskatchewan. Caused turnovers, Zach Curry had 3 for Calgary, while Mike Messenger had 3 for the Saskatchewan. Assists, Curtis Dixon had 4 for Calgary, while Robert Church had 4 for Saskatchewan. Loose balls, Zach Curry had 12 for Calgary, while it was Mike Messenger who had 15 for Saskatchewan. So leading the way, other than Curtis Superman Dixon with 2 goals, 4 assists for 6 points, while Jesse King, he had 2 goals, 3 assists for 5 points. Tyler Pace had 2 goals, 2 assists for 4 points. So those were the big point getters. So Tanner Cook also chipped in with 2 assists. Other than Mark Matthews for Saskatchewan with the 4 goals, 2 assists, 6 points. Robert Church had 1 goal, 4 assists for 5 points. So those were 2 of the big point getters. And former Roughneck Jeff Shatler, who had 2 assists for Saskatchewan. So Calgary went 2-2 in the month of March, as that was game number 12, where they beat Saskatchewan both times. So after March, the Calgary Roughnecks, they are 5-7, and they are 5th in the West Division. So I'm going to say the Calgary Roughnecks are still in a little tough position to make the playoffs, I shall say. If we take a look at the standings, and then we'll look at the stats before we move on to other business. Well, starting in the East Division, I understand how the playoff format works is the top 4 in the East will get playoff spots, top 3 in the West, and then the next best record, because there's still more teams in the East Division. And the East Division is much stronger than the West this year in the National Lacrosse League. Buffalo Bandits are leading the way with 11-1 record. Second place is the Halifax Thunderbirds. They are 8-4. Toronto Rock is third at 8-5. Georgia Swarm is fourth at 8-6. Then the Philadelphia Wings are fifth at 6-7. Sixth place is the Alberni Firewalls. They are 6-9. Seventh place is New York Riptide. They are 4-8. And eighth place is the Rochester Nighthawks. They are 3-10. Wow, going into the West, you got the San Diego Seals. They are 9-3 for first. Second is the Colorado Mammoth. They are 7-6. Third place is the Vancouver Warriors. They are 6-7. Panther City Lacrosse. They are 6-8 for fourth. Fifth place is the Calgary Roughnecks. They are 5-7. And the Saskatchewan Wrestlers are sixth place at 4-10. So there is still some work to do if the Calgary Roughnecks are going to be able to make the playoffs, as I should say, when it comes to the playoffs in the National Lacrosse League. And then I know it's reseeded like 1 through 8 afterwards. So let's take a look at the player stats once I get there. Bear with me with the app when it comes to the player stats. Look at the top 5 for the Calgary Roughnecks once it loads up. Okay, so the Calgary Roughnecks, the top 5 point getters. Well, Jesse King is leading the team in scoring. In 12 games, he has 17 goals, 43 assists for 60 points. Then Curtis Dixon is second. In 9 games, he has 22 goals, 20 assists for 42 points. Third in scoring in 9 games, Tyler Pace has 16 goals, 22 assists for 38 points. Fourth is the rookie Tanner Cook. In 12 games, he has 9 goals, 9 assists for 28 points. And then Dan Taylor runs at the top 5. In 11 games, he has 9 goals, 18 assists for 27 points. So if we look at the goaltending position for the Calgary Roughnecks, well, Christian Del Bianco pretty much is in for the whole game, as he's played all but 1 minute and 36 seconds. His Landon Kells has only played that much this season with 33 games, but Christian Del Bianco is 5-7 overall, with goals against average of 11.61 and a save percentage of 7.65. But he's looked up and down in my mind this season compared to in the past. But it's definitely been a much different team that we have now than we did a few years ago. The team that won the NL Championship. So that's the quick stats and standing story when it comes to the Calgary Roughnecks in the National Lacrosse League. So now looking ahead for April, there's definitely one word to say about April. Busy, 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 as the Calgary Roughnecks will be busy, as we will have 6 games. Yes, 6 games on tap for the month of April. However, a couple of those games got rescheduled that were postponed earlier in the year, got sandwiched into April. So it's definitely going to be a very, very busy month for the Calgary Roughnecks. Whatever happens in April will definitely still determine if the Calgary Roughnecks will be able to sneak in the playoffs, but we're going to need a big April and get some help, in my mind. So the crazy NLL schedule continues, as you can go like 2 months without going to a game, and then you got 2 games and 3 nights. Well, the Calgary Roughnecks have 3 home games and 8 nights. So starting with Game 13, this will be on Friday, April 1st, as the Calgary Roughnecks will be hosting the Vancouver Warriors. That will be a 7 p.m. ball drop. And then the next game, Game 14, this will be on Friday, April 8th, as the Calgary Roughnecks will be hosting the Halifax Thunderbirds. That won't be until an 8 p.m. ball drop at the Scotiabank Saddledome. That game was rescheduled from Thursday, December 30th for the East Coast Kitchen Party. Then Game 15, this will happen the next night, on Saturday, April 9th, as the Calgary Roughnecks once again will be hosting Panther City. This will be a 7 p.m. ball drop, so Calgary has 3 home games in 8 nights to start off April. And then Game 16, the Calgary Roughnecks go on the road. This will be on Saturday, April 16th, as Calgary will be taking on the Vancouver Warriors. That will be an 8 p.m. ball drop at the Langley Events Center. And then Game 17 on Friday, April 22nd, the Calgary Roughnecks will be on the road. They'll be taking on the Rochester Nighthawks at the Blue Cross Arena, 5 p.m. ball drop. That game also was rescheduled. That was originally scheduled on Saturday, January 8th. So that's why the Calgary Roughnecks have 6 games. So next episode is going to be a much, much longer episode. And the Game 18 to wrap up the regular season. And by that time, we'll definitely know if we have playoff hopes or not. On Saturday, April 30th, the Calgary Roughnecks will be hosting the Colorado Mammoth. That would be a 7 p.m. ball drop at the Scotiabank Saddledome, or WestJet Field, they also call it. So yeah, the Calgary Roughnecks, they're definitely going to be making up for some lost time, as they had 2 games that were rescheduled into April with 6 games. That's definitely going to test to see our team and our depth, if we can be able to last those 6 games. But to be honest, I'm thinking playoffs will not be in the cards for the Calgary Roughnecks this season. They've just been too inconsistent. As, for example, let's say that Panther City lacrosse team, they were disappeared in the second, third quarter. And in that last game at the Sketch Rush, they were able to shut them out for a couple quarters and they let them come back in, but they still swept them. So, and that's the thing. 3 of those 5 wins came against Saskatchewan. So we'll see what comes in April, but it's definitely going to be a much, much longer episode. So I'm going to say grab a drink and your snack for the next episode of my Calgary Roughnecks this month, and then we'll find out from there if that will wrap up Season 3 or will there be a playoff episode. So anyway, as I like to say, if you want to follow along with this Calgary sports fans' journey, home the Flames, Hitman, Roughnecks, and Stampeders, and I do like this look a lot better for the Calgary Roughnecks, so please bring us back. And yes, the schedule has been crazy this season, but enough of that. If you want to follow along with this Calgary sports fans' journeys, I mostly do talk Calgary sports on my YouTube channel, where we recap games and stories, but I also do a variety of non-sports content when I've had time, which hasn't seemed to been much of lately, with personal vlogs, attempt to call me and do share my experiences. Let's say I'm on the road or a sporting event, and I've done some blogging to go, which hopefully maybe I'll do some more of that in the spring and summer ahead. So if that all sounds like a interest to watch, do follow along with this Calgary sports fans' journey. You know you do, just make sure you hit like, subscribe. I also have my other Social media links down in the description below, and of course I have my second channel in Brett Hornby Shorts, where I exclusively put my short form content on there, so I appreciate a like, subscribe both here on my main channel as well as my second channel. So I'm going to say go Next Go. Let's say best of luck in April, as we will be busy. So we'll see how the next episode does, and will we somehow maybe able to make the playoffs. So in the meantime, so I want to say thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.